Hey everyone, today I want to talk about something that I've been kind of wanting to talk about for a long time since I've kind of done this process with myself in a way. If you look up, if you're just getting into like privacy and security, like personal privacy with like, social media, your like cell phone, all your devices, like IoT, smart home stuff, right? One of the first things you'll kind of see is like hey, you want to de-Google yourself and not have Google like related things such as like a Google account or Google Home or Google Chromecast or there's so many other Google products, like maybe even a Google Pixel if you're someone who has one, right? So the reason is like, right, think about it like this. The Google Suite, it's almost kind of like, you can call it like the Microsoft Suite, or like, I guess, Apple ecosystem slash suite. Basically when you have all those accounts, and if you have like, a Gmail, then you have like an Android or even Google Pixel phone, right? And then you have like a Google Home, and then you have like a Chromecast, all that kind of stuff. What Google does is all that stuff syncs up with each other and like talks to each other, and ultimately it'll mine like data on you and try to serve you as many ads and stuff as possible, right? So for a lot of people, once they kind of put two and two together and read between the lines and realize that, that's kind of like the end for them. They don't want any part of it anymore, right? So that's kind of one of the first steps to having a more privacy focus and privacy secure life with like social, like technology and stuff, right? You want to kind of de-Google yourself, is what they say. Now it's kind of ironic, right? I know first comment's gonna be in this video. You have a YouTube channel, you're not de-Googled. That's true, but this is like a throwaway email that I've had forever, and that's how I've always uploaded my videos. This isn't a main email that I use for this to get into this account, and I don't really watch YouTube on this account. I just use it as a platform to upload videos. Now that being said, there's a bunch of YouTube alternatives today, such as Odyssey and whatnot. But anyways, right? If you think about it like this, de-Googling is the first step, like I said. What you can do is there's a lot of ways to do it. There although there isn't just like a one fix, does everything, right? It requires a lot of research and a lot of you trying things and getting to learn, I guess I could say, the new process and how to do something, because it's not going to be the same. But and the other side of things, if you look at it, right, you'll begin to realize and appreciate that there's more better, I guess, software out there too. For example, my journey, right? Think about it like this. I used to have a Samsung, I think, Galaxy Note 5. It wasn't the one that blew up or whatever, right? In the pocket. And I had a Google Chromecast. This is when I was like a teenager too, so I didn't know any better. I was just getting into tech and stuff. I had a Chromecast, and I had some other Google things, right? And I kind of started to notice, like, I was getting like these hyper personalized ads, and I'm like, dude, how does this even happen? I'm like, did I subscribe to something or what? And as I looked into it over time, right? I saw like, kind of started to read between the lines, and I looked up other things by other, I guess, YouTubers, and you could say like blogs as well on the internet and news articles that basically, Google mines just all this data on you, and serves you those ads, and that's done through just using their products, like with a Google account at the end of the day. Because if you remember, actually, this is still a thing too. A lot of websites, if you want to sign in, what you can do is just sign in via a Google account. The website person or the hosting provider or whatever, the company that owns the site, right? They put off the sign in onto Google, so you just have a Google account, and then Google can authenticate you to that website. So what would happen is, that website would share all those analytics and data with Google, and then that would give you hyper personalized ads. Now, a big thing for me was that I was, when like voice, like on Android, you can have like a Google search bar, I think. That's what I used to have, right? A big cool thing was, like Androids didn't have Siri, they had S Voice, but also Google Voice. Now, when I was like in middle school, high school, when everybody's just starting to get smartphones, because at the time that's kind of how it was. I know some people are shocked that people had smartphones, but my generation was one of those people that kind of started getting those, and more often, the flip phones are going away, although I did have one, right? But the coolest thing was you had Google Voice, which is like you could tap on the microphone. They used to have commercials for it all the time. Tap on the microphone, you could say like, hey, who is the best WWE wrestler, right? For example, and it would search it up for you and it'd talk to you and say, oh, the best wrestler is like Ric Flair, The Rock, whatever. I'm not going to debate that right now, right? It would give you like statistics and it'd talk to you and it'd like show a little problem. That was pretty cool because I guess Samsung had S Voice, but at the time, I know it's probably better now. I don't even know what the heck it's called now because it's been a while, right? But at the time, that's all they had. And it was really cool. But kind of where I'm getting on this is that, as I started my privacy journey and how like started looking into how to de-Google myself, I was looking at, I was clearing all my search history. I'm like, because I was going through and there's like years and years of crap in there. I'm like, get this out of here. And one thing I found that really, twisted, tied the knot, you could say, and made me want to de-Google is I found every voice search I ever had, right? All those middle school years, like you could hear people talking in the background, whatnot. This was probably at least now, I don't know why, I don't even have a watch on, but looked at my hand. Probably at least now, this is probably almost 10 plus years ago. And that was probably so like 5 years ago, there's all of that data in there, right? There's literally recordings. You could go, it was like kind of, you go to your settings, I don't know what the layout was, but your browsing, your history, and your searches, and it would say like voice search. There's a little play button, kind of like on YouTube here, like down in the corner. I forget how, I don't know what way it is here, but you could play it and you could listen to what you said and how you searched. And I'm like, all right, that's it. I'm done. I'm getting the heck out of here. I deleted all of it, and I kind of listened to some of them. I'm like, why was I searching like such stupid stuff? But anyways, that was the end of it for me, because I'm like, if they have my voice recordings for that long, who knows what the heck else they have? And it's been proven to show, like, the camera will allow access to stuff, and who knows, they're always probably listening too, unless you're like Edward Snowden and remove the microphone. But for me, right, that was the turning point. Now, getting into how I de-Googled myself, which is why you're here, because of the title. Kind of to set that up a little bit, because I had to get back into the mindset to remind me of why I did this, and so it's not just de-Googling that it makes you more privacy focused. There's a lot of things to it, just recognizing free and open source software, even like software that's open source but not necessarily free, right? But basically how I de-Googled was, you kind of have to devise a plan, kind of like what you do with anything here. Even like in my other video when I said how to switch to Linux, you kind of have to have a plan, and it takes some personal research. Now, there's plenty of sites out there. I believe there's this one called like privacy.io or something. I'll have to link it in the description, but that site is awesome because it provides alternatives to everything you want to do. Even email, like all these apps, like hosting, calendars, even social media, YouTube. I think it's called like privacyfocused.io, something like that. I'll have to put it in the description, but that's an awesome site to look at. Although if you do like a couple of searches and just search, how to de-Google, right? There's a couple of like methods you can figure it out. It's basically, all right, your Gmail is kind of like the foundation of a lot of things, right? That's what you use to sign in like to your app stores, Google Play, when you set up an Android device, right? So first step, in my opinion, is switch the email. You can do whatever you want. Like if you want to go to Outlook and you think that's better, go ahead. But for me, I looked at a couple. I think there was like Tutnota, the one mail that's like Firefox. That's not Firefox, but I forget, Thunderbird mail. Sorry, I don't know why I thought of Firefox, but Thunderbird mail. I looked into that one, and then I found Proton mail, which was a little bit newer at the time, and that's what I use today, honestly. And Proton mail has been great. It just feels polished, and I have a very controlled inbox, right? My Google Mail was out of control with like ads and just junk coming in and all the history and data, right? So Proton Mail, getting an email established is the first step, in my opinion. You can do whatever you want. That's my opinion, right? And then after that, it's kind of from there. All right, what are do you use like YouTube? Do you have like other Google accounts? Do you have like Google appliances in your house, right? That would be the next step, is kind of getting rid of those. And if you really want to have some smart device in your house, really take into consideration and really think about what's the use cases for, and maybe if you can't like find something else, or don't use it altogether, but that's up to you. So step one is changing your email. Step two would have to be getting off of Android, or booting your phone with some a free and open source OS. Now, funny that I said Google Pixel earlier, but Google Pixel phones are one of the easier phones to do this with. I know Google Pixels have been famous. You can, I think they're, what's it called? I forget the term, but it's unlocked OS, so you can change the OS, which is nice. Kind of like when you put Linux on a Windows computer, right? So that would be the next step, is you want to try to find a de-Googled mobile operating system. Now, a lot of things, there's a lot out there. There's Lineage OS, Graphene OS, there's like Debian Mobile OS, there's something, I forget the exact name of it, but those OSs are great because they don't require an account to set up, I mean, you could use iPhone too, but then again, you're stuck with an Apple ID, and who knows what they're doing with that, right? So that'd be the next step, is kind of getting an Android, or even, there's de-Googled Android. You could try that too. But getting a privacy focused, not necessarily privacy focused, but like a de-Googled, Android OS, that'll really help because nothing will be attached, to that Gmail. But you should have gotten rid of the Gmail already, right? And then I guess the next step is, once you de-Google, right, and get rid of all the stuff and all the searching and find a new account, oh yeah, that's like I said, searching. That's what I was going to talk about. Searching. The big thing is a lot of people like to use Google search because, hey, it's really good, everybody uses it, blah, blah, blah. But the biggest thing now that's kind of changed is there's AI. Now, I'm not saying dump everything in chat GPT because who knows what they're doing with that either, right? But try to find some privacy-focused search engines, or that, because that'll be like de-Googling. I mean, you can use Google if you want. Like, go ahead. Like, just make sure you use your proper precautions. Just know everything you put in there is going to them. But try to find like a privacy-focused search engine, or even self-host one. Self-hosting one is doable. It's a little bit of work, but if you really dedicated, you can. I know I self-hosted mine for a period of time, but it got a little bit too much. It wasn't a lot of work, but there's just a lot of maintenance and kind of had to keep up with it. But it's kind of hard when I had a job and other things going on. But finding a privacy-focused search engine is definitely the next step. Some examples. I mean, DuckDuckGo, that would be like a starter example. I wouldn't use that forever because they get their data, search data, from Bing's index. So I would not use that. But if you want like a start, that's fine. If you want trying to get your feet wet, I'm not saying use it forever, right? But some other notable ones, I think Metagear is one I used for a while. There's Yandex, which is like Russia's, like a Russian one, but you gotta keep in mind, where's that going? It's Russian. You kind of, that's like kind of muddy waters, right? You don't know where your data is going. But there's also a newer one. I don't know if it's newer, but Brave Search is pretty nice. That it's closed source, but they have their own index, which means they get the results themselves. You just don't know what they're doing on the back end. But again, it's not like Google. It's your own thing. It's not like tracking. I mean, from my perspective, it's pretty good. But there's also there's Mojik, and I think there's one more as well. I just can't recall it, but those are a couple I've looked into, and there's so many more. Like, I'm just listing off a couple for example here, but that would be, I guess, the next step to de-Googling. And then with those three pillars in mind, right, the email, the phone, and the search engine, you're not good to go, but it's a good start. You just got to really think about it from here, right? What's next, right? Do you have like any Google, like I said, smart devices, or like Chromecasts, or like, I guess, a watch maybe? I don't know if they make smart watches, but that would be how to de-Google. How to de-Google yourself, right? I know there's probably more than I missed, but that's just a little overview. If you want, I can do a longer video of this, but I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope that this is kind of helpful for everyone. Main takeaways, right? You gotta just take a look at it, make a plan, see what's all out there, and even consult videos like this here. That's the reason we're doing this here. But I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.